today we're going to go over, like she said, the basics of domestic transportation. We'll hit on all varieties, LTL and truckload. We're going to start off with some types, terms, and modes of different transportation. And we're going to also look at the quoting requirements and then at classifying LTL freight. And then we'll look into some of the daily challenges that the drivers face while they're out there on the road. All right, so we have types of drivers. So there's several different types of drivers out there. We have draymen. Draymen are going to be the drivers out there going to and from the rail yards or the ports, delivering either the rail containers or ocean-going containers. We also have local drivers. Those drivers are going to mainly service roughly a 200-mile radius of their home terminal, making pickups and deliveries. Over-the-road drivers, they will cross the country. They can also cross into Canada. And so those are the ones that basically cover the whole United States. Team drivers will also be included in that over-the-road category. The advantage of the team drivers is the extra driver to take over when the first driver's hours run out. And then we have the courier or small parcel drivers. Those are the drivers. They're basically local drivers too, but they're going to have the Sprinter vans or small box trucks. Then we have the different types of equipment. We have dry vans. That's the main or the most common trailer you'll see out there. Then we have the Sprinter vans, straight trucks, and hot shots. Those are there usually for those expedited shipments. The Sprinter vans, they're not usually dock high, so that's one thing to keep in mind. If you do have to load it from a dock, you'll probably need the straight truck. We have the refrigerated trailers. Those are for your temperature control loads. They could be for frozen. They could be for refrigerated, or just sometimes in the summer you'll need them just to keep them below a certain temperature. Rail containers, those are going to be your containers that are on the rail. Most often they are 40 or 53-foot dry van trailers. They do have some refrigerated rail containers. Then we have the ocean containers. You can have the 20-foot, 40-foot, 40-foot high cube, and the 45 length with the standard chassis and triaxles. And then finally, in the open trailer group, we have the flatbeds, step decks, RGNs, and double drops. Those are for your large overdimensional objects. Luigi, do you have anything on the ocean containers you'd like to add?
Yeah, pretty much. These are, we have the majority, most of them, I would say 75–80% are 20s and 40s. And then you're probably going to touch these later, but sometimes the cargo can be hazardous, and that they requires a different type of driver with hazardous endorsement on the driver's license. But yeah, this is a very good overview of all type of equipment used in intermodal drayage. Thank you, Tony.
You're welcome. Okay. So here we are at some different terms that you may encounter with pickup and delivery appointments. It means the shipper or the receiver requires specific appointment time for the driver to be loaded or unloaded. Live unload and drop and hook. Live unload, the driver stays with the trailer and is unloaded while he's in the dock, versus a drop and hook where the driver would come in, he would drop the trailer. Usually the carrier would have a trailer pool established there. They would drop their loaded, take it empty, and then leave. Or pick up another loaded trailer while they're there.
What's the difference in cost if you do a live unload and a drop and hook?
So with a live unload, you will avoid some of the detention charges that are possible. So usually the industry standard is 2 free hours when it comes to over the road. So if you're doing a drop and hook, the driver will be in and out quickly, and he can be back on the road and not losing time sitting at a dock.
Okay.
Luigi, I'll let you kind of, the next three are kind of around the intermodal.
Sure. Yeah, this is a very good point here. We're going to talk about, it's very, I think it's very critical for all parties involved in the transportation to have a clear understanding from the get-go whether a shipment, let's say that comes import into the United States, let's say is delivering to Kansas City door, it's very important to know in advance, to have an understanding with the receiver, with the warehouse, whether, they should know in advance, is the cargo palletized, how long does it take to unload, get an exact understanding of the weight, because an excess weight on the if the container turns out to be heavier than declared, there is a complication. There could be a complication in the transportation, especially if the truck has to go through a weigh station, and if it gets pulled over for an inspection, and if the weight is over what declared, then. So going back to terms here, as you say, Tony, live unload is, I would say, is the most common term of transportation. The driver is waiting by the truck, and when the cargo is fully unloaded, then he backs out of the dock, he closes the container doors, and he returns the empty container, unless there is a street turn. We could have a street turn for a live load, and we can also have a street turn for a drop and hook. A drop and hook, the driver drops a loaded container by the dock, and he picks up an empty a container that was previously dropped loaded and is now empty. So all empty containers picked up from a warehouse could qualify for a street turn if the street turn is approved by the steamship line. Street turn is basically could be the freight forwarder, also the trucking company. We can all request a street turn to the steamship lines, meaning we can reuse an import container for an export. So there is a procedure to get a street turn done. So basically, the steamship line is the final party in the process that approves the street turn. Because sometimes
Luigi, I was just going to ask, what's the benefit of using a street turn?
Yeah, there are several benefits. Could be mostly it's like a green. Now we're trying to save to reduce pollution, and it also saves miles on the truck, because now let's say that there is no street turn, and the driver unloads. Let's say the driver picks up an import container at CSX in Kansas City, and he delivers in Topeka. Now the driver, after the delivery in Topeka, has to come back empty to return the empty container to the depot. Instead, if the truck carrier or the steamship line or the freight, there are several platforms that they provide street turn solutions. If the container can become a street turn, now the driver doesn't need to drive all the way back with the empty container. He doesn't need to spend time to ingest the empty container. There is no lift involved in case the empty container needs to be taken off the chassis and stacked in the yard. The driver goes and reuses the same container for an export. It's a win-win situation for everybody involved in the transportation process, because it saves time, and also we know that there is a truck shortage. It's not the easiest thing to find a truck available. With a street turn, we enable a truck to become available the same day of the import unloaded. So it's pretty much a win-win situation in all aspects of the transportation.
Great, that was a great explanation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Here are some common LTL accessorials and terms. Liftgate. Liftgate is just an apparatus at the back of the truck or trailer, and it basically lowers the freight to the ground. So you would use it in situations there wasn't a dock or someone available with a forklift to unload the pallets. Residential delivery, pretty much just like it sounds, it's a delivery to a residence. One kind of tricky point, I've had it come up a few times at home businesses. It's still a residential delivery, even though it's a business at a residence. So yes, residential deliveries are basically delivery in a residential area. Inside delivery, so on a residential delivery, usually it's curbside or it's dropped at the curb or in the driveway. With an inside delivery, it's taken into the garage. If it's at a business, sometimes it's taken, they need the driver to take it not just to the dock, but take it out onto the floor. That would be your inside delivery. Over length, that would, with the LTL industry the way it is now, most carriers have changed to an 8-foot limit. So anytime you have a single piece that's over 8 foot long, there are extra charges that will be applied by the carrier. And they are incremental usually, and every carrier has a different breakdown, but we can quote those out as they come in. Limited access usually applies to locations such as schools, hotels, construction sites, airports. Any place with a gated access sometimes will qualify as a limited access. So those types of places usually have extra accessorial fees applied. Sometimes it may require a straight truck for delivery versus a regular pup. So that's why those fees usually are there.
What about a business that they have a dock door, but it's really difficult to get to the dock door? They have to go down a narrow alley to get to it. It's kind of a difficult place to get into.
Oftentimes you may see the limited access applied in those situations as well. Sometimes it'll vary from carrier to carrier. Some are a little bit more lenient than others, but a lot of times that could incur the limited access fee as well. And then lastly, the CFS, or the container freight station. So those are for the shipments that came in on an ocean-going container and have been broken down and are then ready to be taken out for delivery. Or it could work in the opposite too. You're taking it there and dropping it off for a consolidation on an export front.
Okay. So I've already received a question in regards to reference sheets. Scarborough does have a lot of reference guides for both domestic and international dimensions on inside of containers and truck equipment and that type of stuff. I will be sending out this presentation after it's done, probably within the next week or so, along with some links to some of those guides. So I hope that that answers that question. You guys are welcome to send emails to us anytime as well, and we can help you out there.
And Kim and Tony, to the point you made for accessory charges on residential deliveries, we do receive at times requests to deliver intermodal drayage containers to a residential area. These accessory charges actually that they do when an intermodal drayage container is taken to a residential area, there are a lot of there could be a lot of complications because let's say going to a residential area, the weight sometimes there is a restricted weight. So 80,000 pound truck and trailer is not allowed to go normally in residential areas. There could be low bridges as well. So the accessorials explain all these extra tasks and jobs that they need to be run by dispatchers of a trucking company and by the driver as well, to make sure that he has bridge clearances, that the weight on the roads going to the residential area, they legal, and sometimes the trucking company has to get a weight permit, has to get a permit from the township or from the city hall to bring a heavier truck for delivery. So,
and I would say in those cases, in the cases that it's not as difficult to maybe use a transload service to go to a container freight station, a warehouse that could transload that the items in that container into a truck.
Correct.
Maybe to solve that issue.
Correct. Yeah, in case the 40-foot container cannot go there, then yeah, then there is a transload, yes.
Thank you.